I'm Connor Old, and welcome to another episode of Masters of Controlled Chaos. And today, we're going to be looking at the master of teen comedy. He's a filmmaker that has not only inspired other filmmakers, but inspired everybody else just living their day-to-day lives. He is the director of The Breakfast Club, of Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and the writer of both Home Alone movies. He is none other than John Hughes. Welcome back, guys. If you're new to the series, what we do every single week is we break down a new filmmaker and talk about the general idea of what makes them great. We also look at what I consider his best movie, my favorite movie of his, and then an underrated movie. So before we jump in, I just want to make a quick sort of announcement. This is actually the last episode before we head back into Old Oscar Countdown. Last year I started Old Oscar Countdown mid-October. I'm planning to do the same. So the way I'm sort of knocking these things up is that October 17th or something like that will be the first episode of Old Oscar Countdown. The format will pretty much stay the same. I'm working with the format to make it a little more relevant, because the way I found was that if I did Best Picture predictions at the beginning of October and then didn't re-up it until early January before the nominations were announced, that video was sort of a little bit outdated. So what I was going to do is do the same format where I guess the categories, but also do a little bit of a weekly update to see any rising or falling movies and see, based on perception, based on box office, and how much money the studio is campaigning for it. It all depends. So I'll do a little bit of a weekly update at the beginning of the show, and then go into the general rigmarole. I've had a blast doing this series. I can't believe it's over. I can't believe I'm starting to do Old Oscar Countdown again. It's like, it feels like yesterday I just stopped the series to go into this, and I've had a blast doing this, just looking at all these different directors. It's taught me so much about film, and I hope I taught a little bit about you about film, and just looking about the characters, looking into their profiles, and just looking back into their catalogs. It's just been a really fun time, and I have plenty of directors to do, so I'm not sure what I'm going to do after Old Oscar Countdown. I think I might continue the series. I might not do the series and do another series that I'm thinking about. That's a really great series as well. Or I might do both of them simultaneously. I might switch back and forth. We'll see. But the big thing is that this is actually the last episode in this house. Because I'm moving away to university, I'm going to be having a little bit in a dorm room. So the first episodes of Old Oscar Countdown will look definitely different, be the same format, but I'll also have to put the camera will probably be a lot closer. I'll have to figure out how that works. I'm going to bring my mic, I'm going to do all that stuff. But for right now, this is going to be the last one. I like to set up a lot with the screen. Unfortunately, it's not going to be that. I'm going to try to do something new with my computer monitor or something like that, but the rooms are a shoebox. It's really small, so they won't have a lot of space to do it in there, and I'll just make them, in my free time. So for right now, the hope is that I can continue to do Old Oscar Countdown once a week, the same format. I might have to, do them back to back. If anything will stop, or things will change, or the format will change, I'll definitely make sure to let you guys know. But this is just obviously an easier format. So that's a little bit of housekeeping. I can't wait to get Old Oscar Countdown. That was a lot of fun last year, and go back now to season 2 for the 2018 or 2017 season, whatever you want to call it. I've been thinking a lot of stuff, looking at some movies, seeing which ones are going to rise, which ones are not. Of course, I'm planning on going on TIFF this year, so that should be a lot of fun. Actually, I'm recording this before TIFF because I'm like I said, I'm putting these up because then I want like a little bit of a transition time before I start filming in my university dorm room. So I have not seen TIFF movies yet, but I'm going to see them, and I'll let you know what my opinions on them are and how they're going to affect the Oscar race when I talk about the first episode of Old Oscar Countdown. But I decided to do this last because I love John Hughes, and I feel like it's a good end cap because John Hughes is the high school sort of comedy guy. I just graduated high school, and now I'm moving into the university life, so it's like almost like a chapter of my life is done, and what is not a better way to look back at that sort of chapter by looking into John Hughes' movies. So like I said at the top of the show, he's the master of the teen comedy, and was definitely able to capture that feeling of the teen feeling, sort of the angst and whatnot in the 80s, but not only in the 80s, but more of a universal feeling. The movies that he makes definitely feel 80s inspired, they're taking the 80s, the music, the clothing, whatnot, that felt maybe hip at the time, but not so much anymore. But so you have that part, but I really think that they last, especially some of his best movies, like A Breakfast Club, like 16 Candles, where they're relatable to kids these days, and even though things like technology have changed and moved on, they're still very relatable. I've found an interesting thing where Hughes movies really felt like the 70s auteur movement, but in the 80s. Another director who did that was John Carpenter. The 80s is sort of seen as a sort of consumerism, manufactured, heavily studio-controlled decade with not a lot of individual minds that we see later on with independent movement in the 90s with Quentin Tarantino and whatnot. But even something like Doug Liman, who we talked about, and really just going into, I say that this is like the 70s auteur because of how John Hughes is almost being able to talk to a generation that felt ignored. That's movies like The Graduate or Easy Rider, the early auteur moments were like really felt personal to the young generation. And I think this, same with John Hughes, and more sort of a manufactured consumerism type thing, more studio control is what I mean by that. It really felt like they were speaking to a generation that wasn't spoken to, and really treating teenagers like adults and treating his characters with a level sense of believability and respect and maturity that the characters themselves may not have, but the characters themselves still deserve. He did branch off and not do just teen movies, of course, Plane, Trains, and Automobiles, She's Having a Baby, but they all have to do with ordinary people. I think that's a sort of main key in their lives and their struggles and sort of just a general sort of mid-to-day life. There's no rock stars. Movies are very ordinary, and his movies definitely feel like events, or like sort of big events, like a party or whatnot, in these teens or these people's ordinary lives, but it still has that sort of ordinary shell that has it. And I really think that he does a great job of covering all aspects and make you feel represented, and that's why a lot of people, even my age, really latch onto it, because even if you were the geek, he understood your perspective. If you were the jock, he understood your perspective, and really broke down the sort of walls that maybe cliques and whatnot do. I think almost all his movies are timeless just because of he focuses on human nature and human behavior. And that's why actually I decided to do this, because his movies definitely relate to me, especially at this time. And maybe when I'm older, I'll look back, sort of reminiscing on these times through his movies. But that's why I like his movies a lot right now, because I use the example of this year with the superhero movies. Of course, you have Wonder Woman, Spider-Man: Homecoming, and Logan, and we still have Thor: Ragnarok and Justice League to come. So that would be, this could be a great year. This could be a great year for superhero movies. But you have those three amazing movies: Spider-Man, Wonder Woman, and Logan. And Logan I liked, but I didn't really connect on fully because it was sort of like an old man, and I wasn't at the beginning of the X-Men movement in 2000s to see Hugh Jackman's sort of career arc, and now this is his final movie. So I didn't have all that super emotional weight, and it's a different perspective. It's an old man, so it's not an old man movie, but it's maybe, I think, if you're older, I know John Roca, for example, relates to that movie more just because he thinks just of the like the relatability factor to him. And then Wonder Woman, I feel, is almost like young adult, where it's like finding new and trying to represent yourself and be like a new person in that sense, sort of reinvent yourself. But then Spider-Man: Homecoming, they said that's my favorite actually of the three, because it felt like a John Hughes movie, and it felt like that to me personal because of that. I just came out of the high school experience. It felt very high schooly, very relatable, and did a great job of that compared to something like An Edge of 17, which I did not like, even though it was a high school movie, because it felt more John Hughesy, but more in terms of the 80s, where there was still that disconnect, where Spider-Man: Homecoming felt very relatable. Instead of trying to remake those movies, they tried to make a movie with that sort of spirit, but that's just the high school spirit that John Hughes did so well at creating, and really being able to create a modern day version of that. And that's why I think Spider-Man: Homecoming succeeded. Another thing I want to point out is that he's a great writer. He's also a fast writer. I have here Ferris Bueller in 6 days. He wrote it in 6 days. Breakfast Club he wrote in 2 days, and Pretty in Pink he wrote in 2 days. Like, that's incredible. I'm only going to talk about his directing, and that's what I've sort of been talking about in terms of what I consider the best, favorite, and underrated. If not, I would have picked Home Alone 2: Lost in New York, because that's one of my favorite movies of all time. I think that is a complete masterpiece. I love that movie. Home Alone 2 is so good, and he wrote that, but he's not directed. That's Chris Columbus, who I was thinking about doing, but I decided against it. But if Masters of Control Chaos comes around, I'll definitely check him out, because he's an interesting director to look at, and his career is sort of declining now, so he can definitely see, he had a prime, in the Home Alone, Harry Potter eras. But anyways, he's done the Christmas Vacation, European Vacation movies like Beethoven and 101 Dalmatians, and then of course another movie that people think of John Hughes, Pretty in Pink. I had the two confused with 16 Candles and Pretty in Pink, but 16 Candles he directed, Pretty in Pink he did not. I still watched it because he wrote it and definitely felt Hughes-esque, but we're only talking about directing ones today. And I think that John Hughes definitely has a voice, and something can definitely be John Hughesy, right? It has that sort of spirit. People relate that to high school sort of feeling of that. But I definitely think his dialogue and the way he tells his stories and the characters he creates definitely gave him a certain style that maybe is not a visual style, but is definitely a sort of spirit, tone, and writing style for sure. Okay, now let's move on to what I consider his best movie, The Breakfast Club. First, I just want to mention that, I'm wearing a leather jacket just because, normally I wear like a suit jacket or button-up t-shirt or whatnot, but this just I feel like a leather jacket you see in pictures, felt John Hughesy, so I went with that, even though it's like the Blade Runner 2049 jacket, which it's actually probably in theaters this week, so I was actually thinking about doing Denis Villeneuve, but he hasn't done enough yet, but he's definitely one of my favorite directors, and I can't wait for that. I haven't seen it yet. But now, like I said, The Breakfast Club, it definitely feels like very stereotypical and very like clique-based, but the whole movie is the very opposite of that. And I think a lot of people sort of mix that up, but it still talks about, like, it starts off with, they're not friends, there's cliques, there's groups, there's the brain, there's the athlete, there's the basket case, the princess, the criminal, you have the five there, and just, the movie explains, of course, how, we're all the same, and even though we're different groups, we're all very similar, and definitely puts them together, like a lot of John Hughes movies, putting people together by happenstance, by parties, or detention in this case, and just being able to show, like I said, The Breakfast Club is definitely a timeless movie because I watch it and I know kids in high school who really love this movie and they're just obsessed because it's like, wow, it's almost like there's a movie in the 80s that knows exactly how I feel and it's speaking directly to me. Even though it was made in the 80s, doesn't mean it's not a movie that I still love and I still get, and I feel the same way where it definitely speaks to me. And there's certain scenarios where it's like, okay, that's very stereotypical, that's very generic, whatever, but those stereotypes are definitely easily broken down throughout the movie to show that human behavior and human nature is still the same. And that's actually a unique perspective where I think over time has brought to the movie, where the way I looked at it at least was, in the 80s it was sort of a thing of, yes, the groups, the jock and like the popular kid and the cheerleader, we should break down these sort of society type things and remove the groups that are created just sort of naturally in high school that I can vouch for there still happens in the high school today. But now looking back at it, it's not only just the groups, but it's also how generations sort of look bad on each other. I think always the generation looks at the next generation and looks how fortunate they are and say, oh, I never had that, I couldn't have that, this generation is the worst generation, it's going to be good, it's not as good as my generation, the millennials and Generation X, there's all that sort of conflict. But I think there's a great sort of lesson in terms of when I look back on it, it's like, there's technology and there's social media and things have drastically changed for sure, but things have, for the majority part, stayed the same, and human nature and human behavior still hasn't changed. And even though it may not be physical bullying, well, there's still social media bullying now. It's like social media wasn't around there, but there was still physical bullying. There's different things like that. And the more we progress, we still have those similar traits and the similar human nature that they have. And I just think this is like the ultimate John Hughes movie, just because it's an incredible ensemble piece. Like every character, Judd Nelson, Molly Ringwald, Anthony Michael Hall, Emilio Estevez, they're all just so great, and working in through each other and really opening themselves up. And it's a really heartfelt movie. There's some funny moments for sure. Great soundtrack at the end. Don't You Forget About Me. But I think over all of his movies, this is the most heartfelt one. It has Pretty in Pink 16 Candles sort of has a quirkiness aspect to it, and Weird Science has the zany aspect to it and the really funniness, and but Breakfast Club has really the heart, and that's what I find in this movie. And just like it's so like it just feels very real and very emotional in that sense, and not in dramatic ways, but as just a real movie. And of course, the incredible soundtracks that John Hughes does, like I said, point out this is a great one. And The Breakfast Club is just a timeless movie that I recommend really to anybody. So everyone should definitely check it out. If not, even if you're not in high school, it's sort of a movie that makes you reminisce on those times, or if you're in those times, you look forward to those times. It's a period of someone's life, but everyone goes through it. So that's just an interesting sort of way that John Hughes does it, and this is the ultimate sort of teen comedy, teen drama, whatever you want to talk, teen movie. It's definitely that, and it's fantastic. Definitely a great coming of age movie too. Okay, now I'll move over into what I consider my favorite, which is Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I love this movie just because it's so much fun, it's joyous, it has an incredible amount of energy, and I just love the theme of capturing the dreams and ambitions and the future of how you have your whole life ahead of you. I definitely relate to that now. It's like, where will I go? I don't know. You can't predict it. You sort of just have to go along for the ride. And like the movie says, if you don't stop once in a while, life will pass you by and you'll miss it. That's not the direct quote, but that's the whole thing there. And just having fun with life. And Ferris Bueller is an amazing character. Some people want to be it, some want to be friends with him, some want to date Ferris, but everyone wants a Ferris in their life. And just the fourth wall breaking that was so unique to me that they parodied later on, and most recently Deadpool. Just really great with that. And that's actually the high energy and the sort of fun time with it actually threw me off the first time, because the way I always was pitched to it was, oh, this really funny movie, it's going to be side-splitting, it's going to be really funny. And when I went to it, I was like, oh yeah, that was a really good movie, I enjoyed that a lot. But I was like, it's not funny. I was sort of disappointed. I didn't really laugh a lot. It was just, some of the more modern comedies can really make me laugh, or maybe like a Mel Brooks, but this one was like, didn't make me laugh. But I realized that that's not necessarily the point of it. It's just a really fun movie. It's a joyous movie. I had a smile on my face plastered on there the entire time. I was just having such a great time. I wasn't dying of laughter all the time, but there's such great moments and then the great set pieces. That's not an action movie, but this movie still has set pieces, and of course Ferris is just an incredible character. And the dialogue feels almost like Tarantino in terms of like they're fast, they're smart, things are going by fast, because Ferris is that really interesting character, and he's just so magnetic. You want to be him, or just want to do something with him. And that's definitely how I feel the movie is, and how a lot of John Hughes movies are. It's almost like acting out your fantasies, whether you're driving nice cars, Ferraris, Rolls Royces, Porsches, or getting the dream girl or guy. It's like almost like you're acting out these fantasies through these movies, and that's why Ferris Bueller is just a great time. I know a lot of people watch it when they're sick, and just a great time, sort of a great pick-me-up movie. And those movies, you can't say critically they're the best in terms of structure and cinematography. It's like, no, we don't have to. It's not a stupid dumb popcorn flick where you shut your brain off, but it's just a fun movie where you're smiling and you enjoy the ride, and you ignore some of the cliches that happen because you just enjoy the characters and you care about their well-being. And I just really enjoyed the movie a lot, and I watch it a lot. It's definitely rewatchable for sure. And then just underrated, I picked Weird Science, just because it's a weird, zany fun. It totally holds up. It's an 80s movie, right? But it totally holds up. It's like this fantasy thing. It's interesting because it's like his other movies are so realistic and grounded that this is sort of a stray off, and some people sort of deny it for that because it's so sci-fi-esque, but I think I really enjoy that, and the Frankenstein's monster thing. And I could have gone with something like She's Having a Baby, or maybe a little more underrated movies in terms of they're not in the public consciousness as much as Weird Science is, because Weird Science definitely is, but I just based on the Rotten Tomatoes, which isn't very good, so I said, okay, yeah, I'll go with Weird Science. It's really zany and fun, and I really enjoyed it. I just like the characters and how genuinely honest they are, and I feel like that these nerds are awkward and shy, but they're really funny, and they're smart, but it's that awkwardness and the sort of, they don't have a lot of confidence. That's something like the Anthony Michael Hall's character, the geek, I say geek in question marks because he has total confidence in 16 Candles, so that's not really it, but I think this is a great example of the geek sort of culture there, especially not sort of denying sort of the jocks and Robert Downey Jr. sort of throwing to the side and focusing on that geek sort of aspect. I don't know, I really enjoyed it. It's a lot of zany fun. But anyways, guys, for all those reasons, that's why John Hughes is a master of controlled chaos. I love this series. I had a great time with it. I'm going to say bye to it now. Go back to Old Oscar Countdown, and next time you'll see me, you'll be in my dorm room and doing some interesting stuff with Old Oscar Countdown. And I can't believe now it's been a year that I've been doing this stuff. Incredible. But anyways, guys, make sure to like the video, comment below. Let me know what you thought of the series. If you're excited for Old Oscar Countdown, I know I am. That's a little bit more of my bread and butter. But doing this film analysis, I've done more of these, and I've done the Old Oscar Countdown by like 10, I think, almost 10, which is incredible. But I can't wait to do all those countdown and do all that stuff and continue this journey because I've been really enjoying it a lot. So anyways, guys, giving that little bit of a sweet John Hughes ending to the series. I thought it was a great one to end. There's more directors to do. Anyways, guys, I'm Connor Rold, and until next time, stay tuned.